Hello, and welcome to Sound Off with System 1. I'm your host, Brooke Serban. I'm here today with our panel of experts to discuss training and upskilling, ways to level up your career. But before we get started, here are a few words about System 1. System 1 is a leading provider of specialized, highly technical outsourced services and workforce solutions to critical infrastructure, technology, life sciences, and government sectors, putting more than 650 employees and 9,000 contractors to work in the United States, Canada, and the UK. As you're tuning in today, please join us in the comments. Our marketing team will be monitoring them. Let us know where you're joining from and what industry you work in. And first, I would like to have our panel of experts introduce themselves. And to view any System 1 jobs, you can scan the QR code or head to jobs.system1.com. All right, and James, can you start us off with introductions?
Yeah, how you doing? My name's James Byers, Director of Recruiting for our Transit Division.
My name is Dennis Harley. I'm with Alta IT, and I'm a Senior Technical Recruiter.
And my name is Catherine Gorski. I'm a recruiter specialist in the scientific industry at Chile.
Awesome. Before we get started, I'd like to have you all also tout your hot jobs if you have them.
Yeah, so for the Transit Division, our hot job is a telecommunications engineer in Toronto, and we're looking for somebody that has experience working in a BIM-based design environment.
For us right now, a hot job is a coding analyst for a healthcare insurance provider here in the Midwest. Their job is actually remote, so you can work from anywhere. It's starting off as a contract.
And my hot job is a chemist in Princeton, New Jersey, looking for about 2 years of experience in the scientific industry, specifically with formulation, stability testing, and measuring pH.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here today, and we can jump into our first question. So for someone just starting out in their career, what types of training or education can really help them stand out in the application process? And let's start with Dennis.
So one of my main things for certifications is some managers are very keen on them, other managers are not. And throughout their career, it depends on what the manager is looking for necessarily. I'm sorry, I have some background noise right now, so I don't know if that's getting picked up right now. But I suggest certifications, but don't lean on them to necessarily get a job.
Yeah, I think a project management certification can be really helpful, especially early on in your career if you're not sure exactly what type of role or industry you're looking to get into. A project management certification really shows that you know how to stay organized, to plan your time, and manage projects efficiently, as well as collaborate with others. So I definitely think that this is a really great certification to add to your resume early on in your career.
So yes, in the transit industry, training and education are extremely important. For professional level roles, a lot of them will require an associate's, bachelor's, or a master's degree. So if you're going to look at those type of roles, be sure that you have those qualifications. And then for trade level roles, any kind of apprenticeship, electrical or mechanical certification, or even a certification specific to the rail industry, maybe in safety or FRA standards, that can definitely help you stand out in the crowd.
Gotcha. So research the industry, see what certs are available to get, and if you're passionate about it and you take that initiative, it can potentially give you a leg up. Great. So sticking with entry level here, what are some of the most in-demand skills right now in your industry? And let's start with Catherine.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I recruit primarily in the scientific industry. So candidates that stand out are those with some hands-on laboratory experience, whether that be from an internship, a co-op, even an academic research setting, all really great on your resume. And then also some soft skills as well are really important. So being able to work with different teams, to stay organized, solve problems, and communicate clearly are all really important when looking for your first role.
So I would say entry level, there's only so many entry level type positions in the rail industry. So the production level roles would be the ones that would be entry level and the most high demand. But kind of in general in the transit industry right now, any kind of system engineering, AI, those types of roles are the ones that are in high demand at the moment.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that and kind of going back to our certs question, the certs can be a great way to enter into I like to consider IT having kind of a low barrier entry. You don't necessarily need a 4-year degree or a long educational cycle. It's certainly helpful, but it's not absolutely necessary. And the areas that you can break into pretty quickly usually revolve around getting some training or potential certification, specifically in cybersecurity. There's a lot of work going on in data centers right now that are still very hands-on. I tell people to kind of shy away at the entry level from the AI side of things because that's a little bit more further advanced in your career and it's a harder barrier to break into. So if you're looking for some of the areas to get in a little bit faster, cybersecurity, tech support, data center type stuff is usually pretty quick areas to be able to get in, start your career in.
Awesome. Thank you guys. That is great insight. So now thinking about your personal journeys, if you could go back to your very first job, what's one skill you wish you had learned sooner that made a huge difference later on? And let's go back to Dennis.
Well, I love this question, but it always kind of reminds me that I wish I would have learned that I can't always control my work environment, but I can always control my effort. That was one thing that I look back and wish I kind of don't spend too much time thinking about everything else that I'm not in control of, but focus on what I am able to manage and take care of, which is myself and my effort that I'm putting into the career.
I think a skill I wish I had picked up sooner was Excel proficiency. Coming into the workplace, I didn't realize just how important data and analytics were to making decisions across really every level of the organization and every area of a business. So I definitely wish that I had brushed up on my Excel skills a little bit sooner just because it's been crucial in my day-to-day work in the roles I've been in so far.
Yes, and I would kind of, something similar to what Catherine just said. I would have focused a little bit more on analytics and the some of the advancements that have been made in the last decade or so with data tracking and the analysis of it. Definitely would have put more of an emphasis on that many moons ago if I was aware of what was coming.
Gotcha. I love that. So taking advantage of the systems that are out there and your mindset is huge. To what Dennis said, especially when you're in your first role and internship, it can get overwhelming since everything is so new and feels out of control, but control what you can control, and that's your effort. So love that. Switching gears, let's talk about those who are more mid-level. For professionals who've been in their roles for a few years, how do they know when it's time to upskill? And let's go to Catherine.
Sure. I think that a great time to consider upskilling is when your current role maybe starts to feel less challenging or more routine, as well as when you notice any new tools or technologies emerging that could really enhance your day-to-day work or bring some innovation along to your current role. So upskilling really helps you stay ahead of any challenges in the industry and bring some fresh perspective into your current role.
Yeah, I have to piggyback off of Catherine there, and same kind of thought. When you're starting to feel a little stagnant midway through your career, if you're starting to see others maybe get promotions around you and seeing what the activities that they're doing, that may be a time to take a look at some continuing education and talk to your manager. Talk to the people that are above you that says, hey, what do I need to do to get to the next level? And they may be able to help you more. I know larger organizations, at least on the IT side, tend to have pretty well-defined career tracks of where you need to go and what experience you need to get to those next level. But sometimes those smaller organizations, which are great to work for, you just need to have a conversation with your manager and say, okay, what do I need to do next, and get that next bump in pay or get that promotion or things like that. A lot of it comes down to communication with your higher ups.
Yeah, and I mean, I hate to repeat exactly what Catherine and Dennis were saying, but when you start to feel that when you start to feel things are getting stagnant or your growth is kind of plateauing, that's the time when you want to really take a step back and kind of say, okay, what can I do to improve? What can I do to make myself stand out? Whether that's getting maybe a PMP certification or professional engineering certification, or even a master's degree. What are the things that you can do to kind of set yourself apart again?
Yeah, got it. So if this resonated with any of you listeners and you're not feeling challenged in your current role, maybe it's time to look for some courses. It's time to keep progressing in your career, look for what's out there. And how should working professionals go about upskilling without overwhelming themselves? And let's start with Dennis.
I always think of the analogy of how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. Especially working professionals that are getting a little further in their career, their work-life balance may be a little bit more challenging because they may have some family or some additional outside of the work experience. So I suggest that folks start small. If you can just start to get the momentum of any sort of continuing education or certification, start with something that you can manage, that's not going to necessarily take a lot of your time, and then layer it on from there as you really kind of want to ramp up. It also gives you an opportunity that you're not going to get necessarily, hopefully, overwhelmed right out of the gate, get discouraged and not want to continue down that path. So I always tell people to kind of start small, find something, just start, there's a lot of free information out there that you can free courses you can just dip your toes in, kind of get a feel for. In the tech sector, there's a lot of good resources out there. And so I just say start small.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think taking a focused and step-by-step approach is really important. Maybe setting some short-term goals for yourself rather than, big long-term goals that are unattainable. I think that short courses are, really beneficial, and maybe focusing on 1 to 2 skills at a time instead of a whole new skill set can be really helpful. There are a lot of great resources online, especially with some different self-paced courses and learning. So I think that, learning is really at our fingertips, and setting goals that are realistic for yourself and starting there is a really great way to approach upskilling.
Yes, and I would agree with that. I mean, you want to make sure you stay focused on, the things that are most relevant to you, and also the things that are going to work within your personal and your professional responsibilities. Um, Everything is not for everybody, and you want to make sure that you've talked to your superiors and you kind of really stay targeted and focused on whatever that skill is that you feel like you need to up yourself in.
Yeah, noted. So don't feel like you have to take every course that you see, but start slow, ramp it up. Love it. And how about for you all? What's your favorite resource for learning new things? And let's start with Catherine.
Sure. My favorite resource at the moment is LinkedIn Learning because they have a wide variety of courses, all of which are taught by different professionals and industry experts. So I found this to be really insightful. I really enjoy that the platform is self-paced. As we were just talking about, it makes it a lot more manageable to learn these new skills. And then I also really like that you can go ahead and add these new skills directly to your profile, so they're easily viewable by others as well.
Yeah, and I would say, at the moment, I think my most powerful and go-to resource is the different AI functions that are available to us now. Not a day goes by where I don't, type in the Chat GPT or Gemini, a simple question or maybe something more complex to, get a quick answer to whatever the question is that I have at the moment.
Yeah, I gotta agree. Both of those are excellent platforms and excellent ways to do some learning. Some others that are a little bit, I don't want to say legacy, but the ones that I've used in the past is a Udemy or edX. And there's a lot of stuff on YouTube too that, there's a lot of platforms that are offering micro learning. I think personally, it's not so much the platform, it's just starting the process of doing it. And then, a lot of platforms across the bat are a lot of them. I don't think there's necessarily one that's superior above all of them. Just getting the process started and getting your foot going and getting that momentum and then continuing your steps in that learning process is going to get you your momentum regardless of the platform.
Yeah, love that. So try out LinkedIn Learning. All premium LinkedIn members have access to those courses, but you can also get a standalone subscription if not a member. And if you're interested in absolutely AI is all around, so find the right path for you. That is great. So turning once again, let's talk about those who are in a more senior role. How can senior level professionals continue to grow? And let's start with Dennis.
I found in the tech sector, the number one way to start growing or finding out what the next innovation is coming is through networking, having conversations. LinkedIn is an amazing platform to start to connect with people. You also find out that there may be events in your city that you can go attend that are not just a networking event, but it's usually a day-long seminar that you have other professionals like-minded that are going to be doing some, small seminars, breakout sessions, things like that, where you're going to start to learn a lot of stuff. You're going to start to meet people. You're going to start to interact with some folks, and you may start to find out, okay, well, hey, this guy is, this CIO did this track to get here, and I want to be a CIO one day. Oh, now I see his track. And you can also look at people on LinkedIn and see how they went from, career job and what their titles were before and how they kind of got to where they're going. So you can do it between networking and doing a little research on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I would, I would completely agree with that. And also kind of going back to the mid-level positions that we talked about as well. Maybe it's educating yourself more and developing a couple more certifications, but also expanding the knowledge in your own industry. And like Dennis just said, networking is a great way to do that. And also staying up to date on technology and any kind of industry innovations or advancements. If you know what's coming, you can always kind of set yourself up for that. And it's also important to, make sure you're, leading up or strategically as opposed to operational. There's different ways to lead and manage people, different levels of thinking. And, as you get to a senior level, you might have gotten caught up in some of the things you've done in the past. So you might want to rethink the way that you're doing things yourself.
Yeah, and to build on that, I think participating in different industry events or professional associations can also be really beneficial. Like Dennis and James were just speaking of, staying engaged with others who are in your industry, maybe even in a similar role to you, can be really helpful to foster an environment of innovation, to spark new conversations, and then also just taking on new challenges, like maybe a high impact project or, mentoring someone below you can also be really great ways to gain some new perspective and continue to grow.
Got it. So just like every stage of your career, take advantage of what's out there, be a lifelong learner, all the things. Nice. How about, why is it important for leaders to actively invest in training and upskilling the people around them? And let's start with Catherine.
I think that it's important for leaders to invest in training because it really helps everyone grow on the team. When people feel like they have adequate training, they feel more confident in their abilities. They're going to perform better and feel ready to tackle any challenges that might come their way throughout the workday. And then they're also just more engaged. They enjoy showing up to work every day. And they're really setting up the whole team for long-term success by investing in training.
And I would say, continued education and training, it's only going to make your team stronger, more productive, and more stable. Everybody wants to feel valued and they want to feel like they have a sense of growth and there's somewhere, some advancement for them to make.
I echo those same responses. Fostering that culture in an organization of continuing learning, those are also the people that you want to work with, and you create more cohesion with your team because you maybe all have access to the same training, or I've done training with teams before where you're all on the same track. You take, it breaks up your day. If your team has, every Friday we have an hour-long training that we're working on for 6 weeks. It's something that, you can bring in coffee and donuts for the day. There's a lot of things that allow a employee to recognize that, hey, this organization and this management cares about me and cares about my growth and is willing to help me get past any post-education, maybe that, college or technical training or anything like that they've got that's going to continue to have them upskill. And that inherently also offers some loyalty. People tend to, if you put some work into me and put some time and money and offer me the opportunity to learn, I'm going to rethink that a little bit more before I just jump ship for $1 more paid an hour. Necessarily, it could be any scenario. They might want to stay with your culture a little bit more than risking the chance just for a few more dollars to go somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. And to echo that, there was a report from LinkedIn that 94% of employees said they would stay at a company longer if it invested in their learning and development. So absolutely hit all those. We have some viewer questions. Let's see what we've got. As a recent graduate with limited experience, what is the best way to stand out as a job applicant? That's a great question, Jackson. Thank you. What do we think?
So I would say, kind of back to the first question that we had, do you have any kind of specific trainings or is there any kind of certifications that you can get on whatever you're targeting, which, I'm not exactly sure what industry you're in, but those types of things can really make you stand out. And also anything that you have that might be relevant to the type of position that you're applying for, whether it's, some projects that you've done in school, if you do have certification for it, even if it's just a hobby for you, whatever it is in that industry, make sure you put that on your resume, because you never know what everybody else has, and that could be the one key word that makes you stand out from somebody else.
Yeah, I think if you have limited experience, going back to that training question, learning different skills and doing some certifications on your own time can also be really helpful as you're applying to different jobs, really building up your skill set in the meantime. And then also tailoring your resume to the different roles that you're applying to. If you maybe don't even have professional experience in that area, if you took a course in it, maybe completed a project in school, it's also really great to highlight that experience because it shows whoever's looking at your resume that you have some knowledge and expertise in that area, even if it's maybe not necessarily in a professional environment.
Yeah, great advice. The other thing I would layer onto that, though, is talk to one of us. Get a hold of a recruiter. Get a hold of somebody that's a professional in this environment. Call somebody, obviously System 1, Alta, and Julie, any of us that is in your industry. We are in the weeds every day dealing with kind of what's going on with the marketplace. We might be able to give you some tips and trades. We might be able to do a quick review of your resume and say, hey, this is too long, or this is too short, or I would add this, and you're missing maybe some keywords. And our contacts and our networks, we may be able to help you find an opportunity that may not necessarily be as evident out there in the sea of jobs that are on between LinkedIn, which does a great job, the Indeeds of the world. You can get lost in the weeds out there, and it might accelerate your opportunity to find the next position by connecting with a recruiter. Also, start growing your network as well too. Don't worry about networking on LinkedIn. It is a professional platform. You don't have to be friends from high school to connect on there. It's not like other social media, right? Like, it is literally meant for professional networking. And with that being said, I always tell folks, that's where you keep it professional. So feel free to reach out to people that are in places where you want to be. You can just hit, connect. Connect to that person that has 2 years experience and be like, hey, how did you get into GE Aviation? How'd that work? You'd be very surprised at how willing people are able to help you on platforms like LinkedIn specifically to help you get to where you're going, instead of hitting apply now, and just feeling frustrated.
And also, to add on to what Dennis was just saying, once you start doing that and you develop a network, all of a sudden, whenever somebody that you've already talked to hears something, they might reach back out to you and say, hey, here's this opportunity that I just heard about. I don't know if you're still looking, but we wanted to present this to you. So definitely some great advice.
Yeah, love that. Love that shout out. Connect with these guys. Their ats are in the comments. Let's get one more question. We've got Carl. How do senior professionals get noticed if they have a lot of experience? And I want to highlight that last part. Do cover letters matter, or should I write a tailored resume? Is there a preference for the industries that you guys are in?
I'll start off with that one. I mean, definitely a tailored resume. You want to have your most relevant experience to whatever position you're looking at on there. But at the same time, I don't recommend having 4 to 5 different resumes out there for a recruiter to pull up, because now it starts to look like, well, did they do this in 2004? Did they do this in 2004, or was it what I see on this other resume? So be careful, make sure everything is legitimate and accurate. And then as far as the cover letters, I would say that's kind of company or client specific. Some like to see them, some never read them. So it's best to read the room. If you have one, attach it on your resume, and a recruiter like us or a company that we may submit a candidate to, they'll make the decision on if they want to read that or jump straight to your resume.
Yeah, I got to echo that same opinion. It's hard. There's a lot of information out there right now. There's a lot of jobs. There's a lot of competition for these jobs as well too. And as a senior professional, you start to kind of get lost in the mix, because applying for jobs these days is not necessarily how it was even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I don't know the last time you had to go look for a job. So the landscape has shifted. Again, shameless plug, but talk to a recruiter, talk to a senior recruiter that may be able to help you take a look, because one of the values that we tend to bring over above everything else is we can give you a strategy to help you get into certain organizations, and sometimes even in organizations that we may not necessarily be directly associated with, but we may know somebody or contact you. It comes into that networking thing. Every job tends to be a little bit different. To echo that about the cover letters, in tech, I don't think for anybody reads them. I think it's nice to offer a cover letter if it, at some point, but everybody's scanning that first executive summary and then starting to look at your last 5 years worth of work. Let's just use that as an example. If they get past your first page, I also tell folks, senior professionals, man, we can have a lot of information on our resumes, and it's great information, but you got to trim it down. I always recommend to folks, especially that are considered more senior professionals, a page per decade if you can do it. So if you 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, once you start getting out there, unless you have some really in-depth technical experience that really needs to be outlined on that fourth or fifth page, try to keep it brief, and then you can customize from there. Kind of what we were just talking about is that if there's a specific position with XYZ company and we really need to highlight certain skills, we'll kind of shift around and bring those to the forefront of the resume to make sure that they're there, or take some stuff off that's like, this isn't relevant to that job. But again, like you were saying, 4 to 5 resumes out there can cause a lot of confusion. And that confusion tends to lead to distrust, and that distrust causes you not to be ever viewed as an applicant.
Yeah, completely agree with everything that was said.
Perfect. I think they summed it up perfectly. And we are out of time for today. So thank you to our panel, and thank you for everyone that commented. If we didn't get to your answer live, we will do our best to answer them in the comments. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to follow System 1 on LinkedIn and subscribe to our YouTube for all past Sound Off episodes. And make sure you tune in every first and third Friday of the month, as we will have new episodes. Our next episode is Friday, August 15th. It will be Making Your Resume Work, tackling gaps, transitions, and tricky scenarios. See you there.
Thanks, everybody.